My friends, NATO got clapped. During military exercises in Estonia, a small team of 10 Ukrainian drone operators destroyed 2 NATO battalions within a couple minutes.
We are winning!
What a disaster! Ukrainian veterans proved NATO training useless and obsolete. And look, I come from a NATO country. It's not as if this makes me happy, but this is the reality. Everything was revealed on the 12th of February, when the Wall Street Journal released an article titled, "NATO has seen the future and is unprepared." Yeah, well, we all had figured that out by now. Even my barber mentioned it. That's when the article stated, overall the results were horrible for NATO forces.
Son of a...
And spoilers, in this exercise, it's the British Army that got taught a lesson. One NATO commander overlooking the exercise even stated, "We are effed." The shocking part is that this article was released in February, but covers a NATO military exercise called Hedgehog 2025 that took place in May 2025. Whatever happened there was so embarrassing that it took NATO almost a year to fully disclose the details.
Shameful display!
So in this video, you'll discover exactly how humiliating this military exercise actually was, and what it means for the future of NATO. Let's be real, the internet is like the modern battlefield with drones all around you. Every click, every scroll, you're being watched, tracked, and targeted. Unless you're covered by VPN. Then, you're invisible to the enemy. Huge thanks to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring this video. CyberGhost routes your traffic through a secure, encrypted tunnel, keeping your IP hidden and your data private. And trust me, we've seen how pipelines and tunnels can change the course of a battle. Boys, instead of using the incognito window, please just turn on CyberGhost VPN before you browse. It encrypts and reroutes 100% of your traffic through their secure servers, so no one will ever know about your online activity. What's more, CyberGhost VPN doesn't keep logs, so not even themselves know what you do online. Just with a few clicks, you can change your virtual location. For example, from Canada, let's pick Australia. And that way you can instantly unlock geo-blocked content from tons of streaming services such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+. You can even snatch better online deals and play games blocked in your region. One subscription covers up to 7 devices, so it's perfect for sharing with family and friends. CyberGhost works on all major platforms: Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even smart TVs and consoles. Right now they're offering an insane deal. $2.03 a month plus 4 months for free. That's 84% off, along with a 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 support. Join over 38 million users and grab your discount via the link in the description below. CyberGhost VPN will keep you safe. For me, FPV drones are changing warfare today the same way machine guns did during World War I. We're talking about a relatively simple weapon that could be operated by small teams, and that suddenly made exposed movement on the battlefield extremely dangerous. A couple well-positioned machine gunners could devastate an entire battalion within minutes. That's exactly what happened to the Royal Montreal Regiment on the 9th of April 1917 during the Battle of Vimy Ridge. As part of the second wave, the battalion advanced in the open after the initial artillery barrage had lifted. But then a reported 4 Bavarian machine gun nests survived the bombardment and cut through the exposed Montrealers. It was a massacre. By the time the machine gun positions had been silenced, the RMR battalion suffered 50% KA or wounded. All this to say that both machine guns and FPV drones today created a real deadlock for field commanders. Old tactics and big maneuvers became obsolete. Concentration of forces just increased casualties. All this forced officers to rethink their entire doctrine. But historically, armies only really learn when they faced the fighting themselves. But this rarely happens when they only have an observation role. A good example is the Russo-Japanese War, where 10 years before the start of the Great War, European military observers already witnessed the devastating firepower of machine guns and artillery, but also trench warfare, barbed wire, hand grenades. However, their home countries largely failed to adapt their doctrines accordingly. Same thing today. Despite all the available footage and feedback from the Ukraine war, It took NATO a long time to adapt to the new reality of drones on the modern battlefield. I would say a good 3-4 years. That's only when they went beyond theory and actually decided to test their combat doctrine against Ukrainian UAV operators. And overall, the results were horrible for NATO forces. I really want to tell you how bad these results were, but this story actually starts in 2022. When the Ukraine war started, it was believed that one of the best ways Europe could help was by providing NATO training to Ukrainian recruits and conscripts. That's how since 2022, an estimated 200,000 Ukrainians have gone through some form of NATO military training in various European countries. For example, in this video from July 2022, we see British instructors providing basic training to fresh Ukrainian recruits and civilians. We can observe British soldiers teaching them some tactical maneuvers as well as weapon handling, such as how to operate AKs. Pretty ironic when you think about it.
Best magazine. And carry on firing.
But very quickly we started noticing some cracks in the narrative. Already then it was clear that NATO tactics were completely out of touch with the reality of the modern battlefield in Ukraine. In Britain, the first year consisted mostly of urban warfare tactics, even though most of the fighting took place in trenches. When trenches were finally added to the curriculum, it was embarrassing. Nobody in NATO really knew how to clear a trench. In this footage, it's obvious the Norwegian National Guard clearly had no clue on how to clear trenches. But that's not all. The Ukrainians would ask, "What do we do when we're pinned down?" "Ah, don't worry, that happens all the time, just call in an airstrike." Or like when Ukrainian tank crews training on Leopard 2s asked their German instructors, "What about enemy minefields?" And the Germans replied, "Just go around them."
Madness. Madness and stupidity.
I think you got the point, but just for the fun of it, let's do some more trolling. For example, in late 2023, 6 months after the failure of the Ukrainian summer offensive, where Ukrainian armored columns just got obliterated, that's how French Leclerc tanks deployed in Romania maneuvered in open ground, no camouflage, no explosive reactive armor, no cages, while reconnaissance was carried out like during the Cold War with the Panhard VBL. In real life, this tank squadron would get spotted and destroyed within a couple minutes by enemy drones. Then a couple weeks later in January 2024, French infantry was rediscovering trench warfare. But if we have a closer look at the footage, the tactics are horrendous. Infantry packed behind armored vehicles, we can count here 16 riflemen back to back. Those are literally World War II tactics. Then they finally enter the trenches. But to look at this 8-man unit, they're all packed one onto another. And this is French national TV. This footage was approved by the army. But don't think the problem is France. These are NATO tactics. Because the way British mechanized infantry maneuvers is just as ridiculous. Check this out. In this urban warfare training, we see an entire rifle squad in 2 files behind a Challenger 2 main battle tank. Had they been at the front, a single FPV drone would wipe them out in seconds. Turns out it's a British Army unit like this one that tested its doctrine against Ukrainian UAV operators. You can already guess what happened. And if you dare criticize, they'll say, "But you're only a civilian, what do you know about warfare?" But let's go back to the French army. What is this? Even your average airsoft team has better tactics. In this part, this soldier wants to throw a grenade. But what are these 2 guys doing in front of him? I don't understand. Are they trying to form some sort of human shield? Look, even in Denmark. In March 2024, the Danish instructors clearly stated, "Hopefully we can get to a place where the Ukrainian army mirrors itself a little bit more like Western armies." It's always the same thing. NATO standards are the gold standard. Now let's take a look at the Bundeswehr. And if you're interested, I made an entire video about the sad state of the German military and how they plan on turning things around to become Europe's strongest army. Link will be in the description below. Okay, so let's take a look at how German soldiers train. Once again, official footage from the Bundeswehr. This assault of German Panzergrenadiers started with snipers overlooking the area, followed by an old-school Fennec recon vehicle with this guy popping his head out using binoculars to search for the enemy. I'm pretty sure these guys' grandfathers use the exact same tactics. Then the Bundeswehr deployed its only operational Marder IFV for the video, only to disembark the infantry component 150 meters away from the tree line. Then the riflemen just chill in the open, I don't know, maybe getting ready for some barbecue, before slowly walking towards the enemy while being fully exposed. I know they mean well, but man, this is bad. You know what, just try this in any video game and you'll have your answer whether this works or not. In the end, the Panzergrenadiers regroup side by side before the final assault. I don't know, they fix bayonets or some shit. The commander blows the whistle, and then they charge. And of course, the enemy soldiers wearing red armbands flee. For legal purposes, the German soldiers didn't actually fix bayonets. That was a joke, although at this point, I personally think they should have. Okay, so we looked at France, the UK, Denmark, Germany. Now let's take a look at the US Army. Last summer, in July 2025, the US Army was so proud to announce that they were now incorporating bomber drones in their drills. They wrote, "Have you ever seen a drone drop a grenade?" As a matter of fact, yes, we all did. It's not that spectacular. All this only to show how they completely missed their targets over and over again. Even jihadis in West Africa know how to do it. They got roasted so bad that they deleted the Twitter post shortly after. Anyway, now you understand why I'm never invited to NATO events. Who knows, maybe it's a badge of honor. Had I been in the army, let's just say I would have scrubbed a lot of toilets. Actually, Captain, the manual is wrong. This is not the adequate tactic to use. That would have been my rank, Chief Toilet Officer. Jokes aside, it's not as if everyone in NATO was completely blind to what's going on. I've had numerous officers from NATO countries reach out to me to discuss the tactics being used in Ukraine and how they could apply this for their unit, especially the role of drones, infantry assault tactics, and the use of armored vehicles in the modern age. Anyway, because of everything you've seen, I often joked that it's actually Ukrainian soldiers that should teach NATO forces. Well, surprise, surprise, that's what ended up happening. But it took some time for NATO and the Western mainstream media to admit it. Remember what I told you when the French army was forming the Ukrainian 155th Mechanized Brigade in the fall of 2024? France was really proud about this project and a lot of videos were pushed in the mainstream media. But if you don't understand French, you will naturally skip through a lot of subtleties in what was said. In one of the videos, we were told how the Ukrainian recruits have already been separated into riflemen, artillerymen, and crews for the vehicles. That's because in interviews, it was clear from the get-go that French instructors would only teach how to use French weapons and cover the technical aspect of the formation. Then I will paraphrase what Captain Arnaud had to say. The focus of the formation was a 3-week course on maintenance and teaching the troops how they can repair the equipment by themselves on the ground. So the French didn't provide tactical training for the Ukrainian infantry. Then comes the fresh dill and parsley on top of borscht. I quote, 1,500 French soldiers were mobilized during this course, an opportunity for them to also experience new ways of combat. It all makes sense now, all the clues laid there in plain sight. And here from Colonel Alban.
On n'a pas l'expérience d'un combat à parité. Donc de la guerre de deux armées constituées, équipées avec du matériel moderne. Ça, nous, on le redécouvre avec eux.
At the end of the day, they even said that this training mission is a win-win situation for the French army. So this goes to show how despite all the PR and media announcements, the French army was aware of its limitations and was very pragmatic. The goal was to provide Ukrainian forces with a safe training environment, a place where they could regroup without risking having missiles fall on their heads. Same thing in this reportage released in December 2025. Although the title states, "When France trains Ukrainian soldiers," in reality, the French army only built a mock-up battlefield like the ones we can find in Ukraine. Even if French TV focused on French soldiers teaching Ukrainian recruits, it was all an act, because the real instructors leading the exercise were the Ukrainian veterans right behind. Lieutenant Ternoir even admitted that we constantly learn from the feedback of Ukrainian soldiers. They're teaching us how to fight and protect against drones. Most NATO forces understood their tactics are outdated and ended up following the same principles as the French army. Provide safe and well-equipped training grounds for Ukrainian troops, but who will be trained by Ukrainian instructors, veterans returning from the front. Before we can talk about this fiasco, I have to tell you about this video I posted in November. In case you missed it, here's a quick summary. In October, a Ukrainian battalion commander with the call sign 18 supervised the training of more than 400 Ukrainians, of which only a dozen had combat experience. These men were to be trained in Poland by Polish and Czech military personnel. The Czechs were responsible for marksmanship and engineering, while the Poles trained the infantry fighting vehicle crews, and then Ukrainian instructors taught advanced tactics. Right off the bat, the few Ukrainian veterans that were present laughed by saying NATO tactics were medieval. I quote, "They continue to teach from Grunwald textbooks." Ouch! Medevac, assault tactics, the use of armored vehicles, everything was outdated. At one point, one Ukrainian veteran with 4 years of combat experience was so appalled by what he saw that he rage quit, paid himself for a bus, and returned to the front. Yeah, that was really humiliating. But that's not all. Then Czech paratroopers wanted to practice an assault on Ukrainian positions. The Czechs were pretty confident since their leader was a combat veteran from Afghanistan. Yeah, well, this is what happened next. The exercise starts. Czech troops leave the assembly area. I believe they formed attack columns and then advanced towards Ukrainian positions. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians simply launched their Mavic drones. Then the article says that after the first attempt, instructor Jakub stopped the scenario and asked, "Can we take out the Mavics?" Ukrainian commander 18 asked why. The Czech commander Jakub replied, "You find us too fast with your Mavics, and we can't get to you. You detect us on the approach to your positions." Wow. Let's just say the Ukrainians didn't find this funny at all, and they responded harshly. If the drones are removed from the training ground, it will no longer be a modern war, but a reconstruction of the 2010s. Surprise, surprise, in the end, it's Ukrainian Commander 18 and his combat veterans that ended up training the Poles and the Czechs. He said, "We showed them how to properly storm with a drone and how much easier it is." They were shocked. Guess what? That was only the tip of the iceberg. Because on the 12th of February, the Wall Street Journal reported, NATO has seen the future and is unprepared. A simulation of drone warfare shows how far the alliance has to go to learn the lessons of Ukraine. Essentially, in May 2025, 16,000 troops were gathered in Estonia for NATO exercise Hedgehog 2025. The objective was to simulate a contested and congested battlefield with various kinds of drones. But you could see that in these official announcements there was still a lot of arrogance. Hedgehog envisioned a battlefield where tanks and troops still have some ability to move. During one scenario, a battle group of several thousand troops, including a British brigade and an Estonian division, sought to conduct an attack. Essentially, the mission was for NATO mechanized units to break through a wall of drones. Only problem, a team of 10 experienced Ukrainian drone operators returning from the front acted as the adversary. Now, all the articles about this humiliating exercise made sure to blur the lines, only mentioning NATO forces. But I'm 100% sure that it's the British that led this wargame scenario. We were told a British brigade participated in Hedgehog 2025, more specifically the 4th Light Brigade Combat Team, since they were deployed in Estonia in May 2025. And that's when Army Mod UK declared how this entire panoply of British armored vehicles participated in a realistic battle scenario. They said it word for word. I wonder what the scenario was. I can already imagine what the British were saying. The Ukrainians don't apply NATO doctrine properly. We'll show them how it's done. It was a disaster. Overall, the results were horrible for NATO forces. The Ukrainian contingent included bomber drone operators from the 412th Nemesis Brigade and FPV drone crews from the 427th Rarok Brigade. Just like we saw in past videos, it was reported that NATO armored vehicles moved in large columns without sufficient concealment, while infantry units did not even attempt to disperse or hide effectively. Nick, one of the Ukrainian drone operators, told Hromadske, the pilots could see 10 NATO soldiers standing nearby and not reacting to the drone in the sky. Yes, it was that bad. These Ukrainian drone pilots were so lethal that in about half a day they destroyed 17 armored vehicles and conducted 30 strikes on other targets. One of the Ukrainian veterans added, the NATO battle group was just walking around, not using any kind of disguise, parking tents and armored vehicles. Quickly, NATO mechanized units became pinned down, aka British forces. And to be honest, the Ukrainians were really nice. It was too easy for them. So at one point in the middle of an exercise, Nick would go to the NATO commander and ask him to order the infantry to disperse. I'm losing it! This is the definition of humiliation. But even with this extra help, it turned to the worse, as Ukrainian drones mined logistical routes and harassed the delivery of supplies to friendly units. That's how the defenders were able to eliminate 2 battalions in a day, so that, in an exercise sense, basically, they were not able to fight anymore after that. Did you hear that? 2 NATO battalions were destroyed in a couple hours by only 10 drone pilots. One NATO commander overlooking the exercise even stated, "We are effed. What have I been telling you for so long?" The Ukrainians then trolled by saying they were fighting on easy mode, since they only launched 30 drones. In reality, the drone saturation on the Eastern Front is actually 2 times higher. So when NATO mocks the Russians for using bad tactics, well, turns out they wouldn't fare much better. If anything, they performed much worse. In the end, Hedgehog was an example of how Ukrainians can contribute to overall European security. That's how on March 12 it was announced how Ukrainian military instructors will deploy to German army schools to help the Bundeswehr. But there's still a long way ahead before we can witness the true integration of drones in NATO doctrine. The Ukrainians admitted that most NATO commanders are old school, how they just don't understand the importance of drones, and how
this is the way.
In this video we mainly looked at infantry tactics. But the entire NATO doctrine has to be revisited. From top to bottom, we all remember how it was American and British commanders that advised the Ukrainians during the 2023 summer offensive. And we all know how it ended. NATO mechanized infantry tactics need to be modernized. That goes for everything else, same thing for artillery. Or the way tanks should operate and be protected on the modern battlefield. This is just the beginning, there's a lot of work to be done. And according to the latest news, Ukrainian naval drones managed to sink a NATO frigate during another military exercise. My friends, don't forget to click the link in the description below and grab the special CyberGhost VPN discount available to all my viewers. CyberGhost VPN keeps your data safe while you browse and unlocks all blocked content online. All for just $2.03 a month plus 4 months for free.